Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I thought I would do a disability related video for you guys because I have been doing a lot of beauty and fashion related videos lately, and I wanted to do something a little bit more orientated around disability because you guys always request me to do more disability related videos. So I am going to answer that request and I'm going to henceforth do more videos because I like to make what videos I like to make, but I also like to make what videos you guys would like to see on this channel. So today we are going to be doing a disability related topic. Today I'm going to be doing a video on the topic of when people forget that you can't see. Now this is something that I've wanted to speak about for a while now, and the reason for this is because it happens to me an awful lot, and when I've spoken to friends of mine who've got visual impairments, they also get very similar things as well. And I wanted to shed some light on this topic, and I wanted to speak about it in the hopes that some of you guys might also relate to this as well. Now what I mean by this is, say for example you've gone out and you're in a supermarket and you ask someone for directions to where the particular brand of tea that's on offer that week is, and the sales assistant can clearly see you have a visual impairment. Maybe you have a guide dog, maybe you've got a long cane, or maybe you've just said that you have a visual impairment and that you actually don't know where to find it. You are having a difficulty trying to find that item that you're looking for. And then 9 times out of 10, the shop assistants will then just say, oh, it's over there. And you're like, and you're actually none the wiser to when you were 10 seconds before. So things like that happen quite a lot, and I think it's the whole thing that people forget sometimes that you have a visual impairment. Even though you might have said it, or you might have some clear indication that you have a visual impairment, like a guide dog, a long cane, or a symbol cane, or whatever else you might use that shows that you have a visual impairment. And when this happens, it can sometimes be a bit frustrating because you then have to try and explain and advocate for yourself and inform the people that you are dealing with that you actually have a visual impairment. I mean, there are plenty of examples. That's just one of them that I get all the time. So often I'll go into Marks and Spencer's and go and get my pasta before work, and I'll say, oh, can you tell me where you've moved something, and the person will say it's over there. And I've quite clearly got a visual impairment because I'll either have my guide dog or my long cane, and I'm like, well, actually I don't really know where it is, I don't know where to go. And then you have to explain to them that you've got a visual impairment, and it makes you feel really awkward because you shouldn't really have to do that all the time, but you often do. But there are other examples. So for instance, I recently joined a new dentist and I had to go in there for my first time, and basically when you sign up to a new dentist or you're at a new surgery, you have to fill out a form with all of your medical details, your date of birth, etc, etc, and the allergies you might have. And I went in there with my guide dog. I didn't have anyone with me to help me fill out the form, and the secretary can quite clearly see I've got a guide dog, and she says to me, oh, here, you need to fill out this form. And bearing in mind, this form has tiny, 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 minute letters, like it's so small, and I read a print of 25, so that's the standard size that I need. And this might have been like, I don't know, 10 or even lower than that. It was tiny, and I was like, I'm actually not going to be able to do this, can I have some help? But I felt very awkward because I had to ask for it, and I didn't really feel comfortable, and she was busy doing other admin work, but I couldn't fill out that form myself. It's that thing of having to advocate for yourself and having to explain that you have a visual impairment, and that's what usually arises when people forget that you have a visual impairment. You have to then explain to them that you actually aren't able to do something, or it's beyond your sensory capabilities because you physically can't see to do that. Another example would be when I've gone out with friends of mine, and my university friends are amazing and they are very aware of my disability, and they are very aware of the things I can and can't see, and you know, they know to do things like describe things that happen in films if I can't see it. They know to describe things that are happening at the theatre if I can't see it, or whatever else it might be that I can't see. They know that I don't have a very far depth of field vision. They know that I can't see very far distances. They're aware of that. But some friends, when I meet them for the first time, or I haven't known them for very long, they might say something like, let's go and see a 3D movie, for example, and it's like, I can't see that. I can't see a 3D film. I've never been able to see a 3D film because I only have sight in my one eye. So maybe one day if they invent, I don't know, a 3D monocle, I'll be able to go and see it. But until that day, I just can't go and see a 3D film. And then let's take university, for example. I am quite lucky because the department that I have currently been in for my master's degree, which is the education department at my university, have been amazing. They have been so good to me, and they have really tried to do as much as they can to make things easier. So for example, they'll send me work electronically. They will then also offer me the work in advance if it's a handout, so I can go and get it scanned by my non-medical help assistant at my university. So they do offer me a lot of things to make my life easier. But I remember when I was doing my degree, I so often would have a tutor rock up to a seminar and they would give out the handouts, and it would be in this tiny minute font. I can't read that, and some of these tutors were out and out technophobes, and they just didn't use the internet. They didn't want to go on to the virtual learning website and put anything up. It was so annoying because I wasn't able to read the handout. Now I have to say, credit where credit's due, the department's administrators and the actual secretaries and the receptionists were really good about getting my work done on time. But sometimes you just had a tutor who completely forgot, and they would just rock up and be like, here's the handout, and then they get to me and they'd be like, oh god, you're not going to be able to see this, are you? And I'd be sat there like, no, I'm not going to be able to see it. So that would be annoying. And that was until I found an app called Tiny Scanner. Oh my god, that app is amazing. It's basically an app on your phone where you can scan in your document to a PDF, and then you can convert it into a text document if you wanted, so you could add it to things like Readerist to make it into speech. It's so good. I love that app. It's amazing. But I didn't know about this app at the time, and I didn't have access to the app, so I was like, I'm not actually going to be able to read this handout on Ovid or whatever it might be, or this essay about James Joyce's Ulysses. I wasn't able to read it, and it was so annoying. I've come to the lecture to be able to learn, and whilst, yes, I can listen to your voice and listen to what you're saying, I want to be able to annotate my handouts like everybody else is doing, but I can't because I've not got it in accessible format. I haven't got it in PDF. There's nothing I can do about it. And then other things at university, for example, sometimes when a new tutor would come in, or you'd get a tutor who would be doing one course and they wouldn't be aware of my disability. To be honest, I can't say anything for the latest course I've done because all my tutors know me really well, and they all had a briefing about my disability before they started teaching me. They knew that I had a disability. Sometimes there were tutors who genuinely forgot. So for example, it would come to marking time, and then they would mark everybody's essays and just do a whole batch, and they'd forget that my essay had to be done via a document, or that it had to be done via Microsoft Word on track changes, and they would be like, here's your essay back, Emily, and I'd be like, what? It's a hard copy, and it would have all like scrawled messages over it in like red pen, and I'm like, because I'm like having to sit there and try and decode everything they're saying, and I have to actually get someone like my non-medical help assistant to help me, or I have to get my mum to try and read the messages, and some of these teachers' handwriting is quite frankly atrocious. I'm sorry, but I'm visually impaired, and I think sometimes I could write better than that, but it's like, I have to change the structure of what? You're trying to read what they're saying, and it puts more time on your essay because you're having to then try and decipher what they're saying, despite the fact that you told them in the outset you couldn't read that and you couldn't have it in a hard copy, you had to have it via electronic documents. And then other examples will be things like where you'll be out and you'll ask someone for directions, and they'll say, oh, can you see that? Or can you see over there where that bus stop is? You have to turn right from there. And they'll kind of give you visual indications, even though they see that you have a guide dog or a long cane, or you've said to them, I can't see very well, can you tell me where so-and-so is? And they completely forget you're not living in a fully sighted world, and therefore you will do things differently. Or I might be walking with my guide dog and I might stop at a curb, and you might get a car come past or stop for me, and then they'll flash their indicators. I can't see that that car has physically stopped for me. I mean, I can hear it and I can kind of decipher that they've stopped for me, but it's so strange because you're flashing your indicators at someone who can't see. It's not going to be helpful. I mean, for some people it might be, but for me, it's not going to be helpful. So the better thing would be to do is just wind down your window and say, oh, excuse me, I've just stopped for you. I'd say thank you and whatever else and get on with my day. There are plenty of examples I could go into, but suffice it to say, there are times in life where people genuinely forget that you can't see. They forget that sometimes you need help with certain things. The frustrating thing is, for the sight loss community, because so many of us are so capable and we try to do things by ourselves and we try to live a fully independent life where possible, sometimes these people genuinely forget that sometimes you need help, and there are things that are totally beyond your capabilities, not because you can't do it, it's because you can't see to do it. It's completely out of your control. It also relates back to this whole you don't look blind enigma and this whole you don't look blind concept. But when someone sees a person like me or one of my friends who's visually impaired, who's very confident and able to do things, they completely forget that sometimes there'll be things that they might need help with. So when that person goes to them and asks for help, they're completely thrown by it because they forgot that they are not living in a fully sighted world and this person has a visual impairment. We live in a sighted world and we are non-sighted, and I think because of that, sometimes things do arise where people forget that you have a visual impairment, and maybe they don't have any experience of visual impairment, maybe they haven't ever met anyone or come across anyone with a visual impairment, and they're just genuinely not used to it, and sometimes they forget. And I think it's okay to do that in life. Sometimes things do happen and sometimes people do forget, like anything, but I think it's important to readdress that balance, that sometimes in life, even though people with visual impairments are confident and able to do things, there are situations where they will also need help because they physically can't see to do something. For example, they might be able to read a book, but they might not be able to see very long distances. They might be able to see colour, but they might not be able to see in the dark. They might be able to see very far away, but they're very short-sighted and they can't read things like tube maps. What it comes down to is trying to remember that sight loss is very varied and people have different levels of sight and they're able to use that sight in different ways. So my sight could be completely different to the next person you'd meet with a visual impairment, and that is how it is across the board. No person's level of sight is exactly the same. Everybody is so different with sight loss. It's a very varied melting pot of visual impairments when it comes to sight loss. I think sight loss is a very varied disability. If you're someone who's done this and you've forgotten that someone has a visual impairment and you said something like, oh, it's over there or whatever else, I think it's just important to remember that sometimes in life that person might need help, even though they can do things and they might be independent and they might be able to live a confident and independent life. Sometimes there are things that are beyond our control, and for that reason, that's when we need to ask someone for help. In life, we all need help for lots of different reasons. There is a balance, and these people with visual impairments are human, and sometimes they'll need help, and sometimes they'll be able to do things on their own. It just depends on their level of vision and on the person themselves. And I think that's what I want people to take away from this. And also, I just want to point out, my family do it. My family forget I have a visual impairment. All of my family forget that I can't see very well. I can tell you on a daily basis, I'll say to my mum or my dad or my granddad or someone in my family, I'll say, oh, where's the remote? Where did you put my charger? Where did you put those biscuits? Where did you put the new tea bags? Or whatever it might be. And they'll go, it's over there, and I'll point at something. Where's there? Where is there? There is an infinite concept to me, as I've said many times. So even my own family do it. So I don't think anyone should be judged on it, because if my own family can do it, I think, you know, at the end of the day, people who don't always know me and aren't always aware of disability and visual impairment, they might end up doing it as well. And I don't think people need to feel negative about that. I just think people just need to remember sometimes that that person who comes up to you with a guide dog might not be the trainer. They might actually be the person with a visual impairment, contrary to what people think, that if you walk confidently and if you look glamorous you have to be the trainer. You can't actually be a glamorous guide dog owner. Actually, there are people who are glamorous guide dog owners. There's lots of us who like to wear makeup and like to dress really dapper and things like that. I think it's about remembering that sight loss doesn't always come in this image that you've got in your head, and everybody with sight loss is different. It happened to me today. I was getting a cab back from university after I handed in my dissertation. Yeah, woo! And what happened was the cab driver rang me and said, you're going to need to find me, I'm in Lewisham Way and I'm waiting outside a bus stop. There are hundreds of bus stops in Lewisham Way. I didn't know which one they were talking about. I tried to find them, I couldn't find them, and I rang him back and said, I don't know where you are, I've got a visual impairment, I can't see you. And then eventually he finds me and he's saying, look, I was over there and I had my guide dogs. That account that my cab company is under, I'm under student finance and that's a company under an account, it says on my personal account that I have a visual impairment and that I travel with a guide dog. Just take that away from this video. It's always important to remember that sight loss is very varied and everybody needs different kinds of help, and everybody's got different things that they need help with. Some people might need help to fill out forms, other people might need help to do things like see bus numbers or tube maps. Some people might need help to distinguish a certain colour of lipstick in a makeup shop. Everybody's different and everybody has different levels of vision, and in life we're all going to need help with different things. I also just want to say to anyone who has a visual impairment, who has had this and people have forgotten they've got a visual impairment, don't be afraid to advocate for yourself. You might feel awkward about it, you might feel a bit uncomfortable, but it's important to do that, because if you're not able to do that thing because of your sight loss, it's not your fault. When you're non-sighted and you're living in a sighted world, that can happen and things like that can arise, because ultimately the people that you might be dealing with might never have met someone with a visual impairment. It might not even be in their mindset. They might just not have ever had to deal with that kind of situation, and they just genuinely don't know how to react. And of course everyone's got different levels of eyesight, and maybe they've met someone before who has more sight than you or a different kind of eye condition to you, and they think you're the same as that person. And I think that can happen. Things like that can happen in life. So that concludes my video today, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. Do be sure to comment down below and tell me if you've experienced any examples of things that I was talking about in this video. Have you ever experienced people who forget that you can't see yourself? And how have you reacted towards it? What's been your response? I'd really love to know. Also be sure to like, comment and subscribe to my channel as well. And I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye!